Well, this is great. Thank you. This is a guilt-free reception. You get to buy our own version of quantitative easing, and also try to improve the mind at the same time, or at least pretend to. But absolutely, what is taking place, I think, is going to be very, very positive. We've just got to get through the next couple of years, as we all know. And one of the key things is for, particularly on the Republican side, although I think that Democrats can be redeemed as well, but let's start with the Republicans. And that is this idea that they must outdo the Democrats, or try to be Democrat-light in trying to win elections. There was a wonderful piece today in the Wall Street Journal by Dan Mitchell, who talks about how tax credits are not going to turn this economy around. Trying to buy support of voters, so-called middle-class voters, by giving them more tax credits for kids and more tax credits for that, is a loser's game. What needs to be done is put aside inhibitions, put aside so-called realities, and go for full-throated, pro-growth, pro-opportunity policies. For example, the flat tax, or whatever version you want, get rid of the tax code. They'll say, well, that may not be realistic. Well, who defines reality? We, the people, define reality. And money, as I mentioned this morning, we did it right, mostly right, for 180 years. It worked. And on health care, ask ourselves, why do we have a so-called health care crisis? It's not the quality of health care in this country. Contrary to what government types will tell you, longevity in this country is the highest in the world. They will say it isn't, but it is. The way they get the U.S. to look like it doesn't have great longevity is they include deaths from vehicular accidents, and they include homicides. We drive a lot in this country, big nation, so we have more vehicular deaths. We also have, most cases, certainly compared to Britain, a higher homicide rate. It's been coming down, but it's still pretty high. You take out those two things, which have nothing to do with health care. I mean, I don't think people will drive any safer because they know they can go on an Obama exchange. Or if they get in a tussle with somebody, they'll say, well, we're not going to use knives or guns because, by golly, we've got Obamacare. Yes. Not going to happen. So, but when you take those out, we're number one. If you reach the age of 60, and hopefully all of you will, you haven't yet, but you're on your way, I've already passed it, you'll live longer in this country than anywhere else because of the medical care we have in this country. So, and the pricing of it, no other country's figured out how to do it cheaper. They just do it through price suppression, particularly in the area of drugs. As you know, in this country, because of the crazy system we have, it costs upwards of $1.5 billion to bring a new drug to market because of all the failures, research. Other countries don't pay for that. They just pay for, mostly, the actual manufacturing cost of the specific medicine. But all of the research, all that you have to go through the regulatory process, they don't pay for it. So they're riding on our backs on that. So they haven't figured out how to do it better. But the fact of the matter is, in terms of health care, the real crisis is not the fact that it keeps going up in price. The reason it goes up in price is because we don't have real free markets. Think of it. Because we've grown up with this system, we don't realize how crazy it is. You go to a clinic or a hospital and you ask in advance what it costs, you get a very strange look. It's one of two things. Either you're uninsured or you're a lunatic. Why would you want to know the price? What's it to you? When you come here, you register. You want to know what the room costs. You don't say, oh, let Medicare worry about it. Blue Cross, you go and have dinner tonight. Get a fine bottle of wine. You don't say, oh, Blue Shield will take care of it. I don't care what it costs. Just give me the liquid. And so the system goes haywire. And the idea that third party Soviet style can police a system like this, the way consumers would normally do, is ridiculous. And so we don't have insurance today. The system, we were discussing with some people earlier, the system we have today is all about prepaying next year's expenses, plus profit for the insurers and covering administrative costs. That's all it is, dollar for dollar coverage. So you don't get normal forces of entrepreneurs finding ways to do better delivery, knocking down costs, coming up with faster ways to create new medical devices, new medicines. We have the crazy system we have today. And imagine what would happen to food prices if we had this system. Imagine what would happen to automobile prices. Take, for example, what we used to call cell phones. One thing about free markets, and then we'll have to get you back to your quantitative easing. One thing about free markets that allow to work, they always turn scarcity into abundance. Turn today's luxuries into tomorrow's commonplaces. You saw it with the automobile. Henry Ford, 110 years ago, typical car costs the equivalent today of $120,000. Henry Ford comes along, develops a moving assembly line, he and his engineers, turns a toy for the rich into something every working person can afford. What we used to call cell phones, you see a picture of it 30 years ago? Big as a shoebox. First one cost $3,995. I guarantee you, if we'd had the system for cell phones that we have in healthcare, today it'd still be as big as a shoebox. They would now cost $9,995. And we'd have the president proclaiming that he's going to establish exchanges to get you cheaper cell phones. Free people will always find new ways of doing things better. And so in terms of healthcare, the reason why we haven't even had more advances, or more affordable advances, is because we don't allow free markets to work. But we see little signs of it. For example, flu shots. Once upon a time, if you wanted a flu shot, you made an appointment with a doctor. Go to the doctor's office or clinic and get the flu shot. Today, they're everywhere. Go to the gas station, fill her up. And you see it with LASIK surgery for the eyes. Costs less today than it did 10 years ago. You heard today Rich Carlgard this morning, our publisher. He had it done in his eyes. He told me 10 or 11 years ago it cost $5,000. Probably could do it half the price today and get a better result. Why? Because you don't have the disconnect, as we do in healthcare, between providers and consumers. A patient is not the real customer in healthcare today. It's all third party. Those are the real customers, not you, the patient. Which is why you still have those ridiculous gowns when you go to the hospital. No institution that wanted to get customers, i.e. patients, would offer up something like that. North Korea, Cuba, yes, but not in a normal marketplace. And so you see it in hospitality. 150 years ago, when you went to the inn, there was a big bed and 10 people slept in the bed. That's the way it was. Now today we have private rooms. Still, in many hospitals, it's hard to get a private room. Oh, they're doing you a big deal if you're not in with 5 other patients wheezing away. It's crazy. And entrepreneurs, if allowed to do so, will keep finding ways. And the fact you do medical tourism, they do it cheaply. Highly trained physicians. And it's a very nice experience, other than the fact that you're sick, but the rooms are nice, they have flowers. I mean, it's like a luxury hotel. They try to make it a good experience instead of treating you like a commodity and floors that look like they came out of a prison set. I mean, so what you're going to see emerge in healthcare, and you see little signs of it. I mentioned flu shots, mentioned things like walk-in clinics, CVS and Walgreens and others, where you have nurse practitioners. Research shows that 80% of our maladies don't need a physician. Technician, a nurse can take care of it. So you go to the walk-in clinic. If it's something more serious, then they'll send you to the hospital. You're going to see more and more, instead of general hospitals, you're going to see more and more specialization areas, where that's all you do. If I'm having surgery, I don't want to have a surgeon who may do this once a week or once a month. I do want to be a commodity when I go under for that. I want somebody who does it 10 times a day, who can do it in his or her sleep. I don't want somebody who says, oh, yeah, I did it just 6 weeks ago. Let me see. No. You want that kind of specialization where that's all they focus on. So the key thing is, good things are coming. And thanks to Salem, thanks to you, we're getting the word out there. Getting the word out there. John said we're getting the word out there. The key thing is to make it move forward. But it won't happen unless we go out and do it. And the exciting thing is, the fact that you're here, other groups coming together, technology makes it easier to communicate with one another in ways that have never been done before. It's ridiculous. The statists have been using this technology better than free marketeers in elections. I mean, just as one aside, I have to get it off my chest. In the last presidential election, a businessman gets the Republican nomination. And what does he do? They have a get out the vote technology. They call it ORCA. It's supposed to kill the Democrats. They never tested it before the election. Now, no one in the private, everyone in the private sector knows when you put in a new system, you have bugs. Anyone who knows you build a boat, you always have a shakedown cruise because there's always things you have to do. It's just a new building. Always have to figure out what the bugs are and take care of it. Software, whatever, you know that. It's never perfect the first time around. And yet they did it on election day. It didn't work. I mean, you'd expect this in France or the old Soviet You would not expect it. Businessman, Republican candidate. And that's what they did. So, yeah, the other side was light years ahead of us. They're still ahead of us in terms of using social technology. For example, in the old days, you had political bosses. Today, until recently, you just did a lot of blasts on TV and radio, reach a mass audience. The Democrats have figured out, liberals have figured out, use things like Facebook. Especially they now are focusing on women. You may have 100, 200, 300 friends. If you in your Facebook say, I'm voting for Joe Blow, that has enormous impact, far more than an expensive TV ad. That can move votes. Somebody saying on a social medium like that, I think I'm going to vote for so-and-so because of this and that. That has impact. Yet our coolest elephants in Washington really haven't gotten that word yet. That's why we have to do it. Can't depend on others. So, enough of my hot air. Let's have another liquidity event. But again, thank you very, very much. KDOW, thank you. Salem, thank you for being in there, making it possible for the good word to get out, good words to get out, interaction, getting people mobilized. That's how we do it. History, in a sense, is on our side. But like anything, it won't happen unless we go and make it happen. So it's our duty. Make it happen. And then good things will happen, and then we can get back to complaining about, why is it the Cubs continuously suck? Why the Yankees have a high payroll and maybe make the playoffs, stuff like that. In fact, the things we should be focused on. And it says something about how we dropped the ball, to be blunt about it, 30 years after Ronald Reagan and the success of his presidency. Real world success. And we have the most statist government in American history, routinely violating the Constitution, routinely taking regulatory decrees, making the law up, stretching it in ways it was never meant before. I mean, elastic bands have never seen the kind of workout they've gotten with what these guys do with the law. They make it up and then say, take us to court. It takes 2 or 3 years to deal with it. Meantime, it's the law of the land. And it's dangerous, travesty. one of the things the courts are going to have to grapple with. When a branch of government, like the executive branch, grossly misbehaves, what are the remedies? So those who make fun of John Boehner filing a lawsuit, well, what's your idea? What do you do when you have a rogue branch? And so we're grappling with that. What do you do when you have a rogue branch of government? So we have to grapple with it. So I'm not going to criticize anyone who comes up with ideas on how to do it, because we've never had anything like this before. Usually it's just one or two acts. And Harry Truman, in the midst of the Korean War, strike at the steel mills. He seizes the steel mills. National emergency. The court said you can't do that. Forced them to back off. This administration, sadly, almost every month does the equivalent of steel mill seizure. And the courts are just beginning, maybe, to wake up to it. So Jefferson was right. Liberty requires eternal vigilance and action. Just because we have a fine pieces of paper called Constitution means nothing unless people breathe life into it. So with that, thank you all very much. Godspeed, and don't watch baseball tonight.